The actual number itself is probably less meaningful than the comparison between different European countries, and you can see that England and Wales is somewhere in the middle in terms of how many forensic beds they provide. Again, this slide is quite old and it would look a bit like so, and then leveling out if you were to continue it. But it does show that over the years the forensic beds have increased quite significantly. This is the case also in other countries, certainly is the case in England and Wales. At the same time, the bed numbers in high secure care have decreased. So what we're finding is we have less people in high secure settings, which is a good thing, but we have overall more patients generally in forensic settings. This goes along with closure of general psychiatric beds. Some people argue that there is a relationship between the two, but certainly there are many more medium secure beds, because they obviously only came about in the end of the 1970s, but even in the last years they have continued to grow. There's a huge number of patients actually detained in any kind of those forensic settings. In terms of the length of stay, about a third stay under 2 years. These wouldn't be the patients in high secure care. In high secure, the average length of stay is about 8 years. But these are figures for any security level combined. And then you have those who stay between 2 and 5, between 5 and 10 years, and then you have a proportion of about 20% of people who stay there for more than 10 years, and some for a very long time and potentially lifelong. And these are also the patients we are particularly interested in our project to see how one can move those on, how can decisions be made for teams to feel reassured that services can be provided or can be managed for those patients, so that they don't have to spend their whole life in a secure hospital. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but I will describe this. So the bit in the middle is a medium secure service with about 60 beds. And what you can see on the left-hand side is where people come from, and on the right-hand side you can see where people go to. And the actual figures are actually not that important, but what is important to see is that the system in England as it is at the moment is actually quite complex. And that is another challenge, because there's a lot of different people involved to make decisions, and a lot of movement between services, which invariably slows things down and is not the most efficient way to do things. So if you look at this particular medium secure service, you can see that a proportion of people come from prison to the medium secure service. Some come from high secure care, so these are the actual patients you kind of want in this medium secure service. These are the ones who were successfully treated in a high secure service, and then they go on to a medium secure service. So these are, the ideal kind of pathway through the system. Then you have some who move from one medium secure service to the other. So this could be because they are moved to a service closer to home, or it could be that the particular medium secure service can't manage their needs or doesn't have the services they need. And then you have also quite a significant proportion who move from low secure to medium secure. So they were either directly admitted to low secure, or they are rehabilitated to low secure service, but then increase their risk and then move back to a medium secure service. So you have in this medium secure service a whole mix of people who come from different services, and the way out is the same. Some move back to prison, some move up security to high secure, and down here is the kind of ideal pathway out to low secure service or out to independent living or some sort of supported housing. But you can see that it's actually the minority who move down in this ideal pathway, and the others move, back to prison or high secure services. So in terms of pathways, as I said, it's quite complex, with a lot of movement back and forth and a lot of inefficiency. So just a few words about the treatment principles, and I know we want to have some other talks as well, so I'll be quick. So in terms of treatment principles, one important principle is that you provide security, quite obviously, but security is not just the structural security like the wall, but it's also about procedures, about policies you have, and it's also relational security. You develop a relationship with your patients that allows you to keep the patient safe, to know them well, to manage their risk, and to know when they are deteriorating and what kind of support you need to offer them. Then we place quite a lot of importance on evidence-based interventions, following the risk-need-responsibility principles. So the higher the risk, the higher the need, the more services somebody should be getting. And you should also pay attention to responsivity issues, for example, motivation or any other factors that could get in the way of successful treatment. We try to be individualized in our approach to treatment and offer treatment in group as well as one-to-one settings. The ward milieu is quite important, has to be structured with clear boundaries and rules. Staff play an important part in providing a role model for pro-social problem-solving behavior, and it's important that staff deal with patients, particularly those with personality disorders, in a consistent way. It's also important to allow staff to develop, to train, to have supervision, to be able to reflect on the very demanding job they do. And we try to be patient-focused, focused on recovery, and actively involve the patient in their care. This is just an example from the enhanced personality disorder service I work in, where we provide treatment in different phases. So phase 1 would be preparation for change, so we're not assuming that somebody who comes from prison or from another service is automatically ready for treatment when they come to us. But we spend quite a lot of time on motivational work and on psychosocial education about personality disorder and about offending generally. And the next step would then be to address the issues related to the personality disorder itself, which is something that could otherwise get in the way of successful treatment of offense-related behaviors. So we provide a number of interventions addressing personality disorders before. Only then in the last phase we address the criminogenic factors in a number of treatment programs, sex offender treatment program, violence reduction program, and substance misuse group. So this is just an example of how the treatment is delivered. So just very briefly, I won't go through all of this, but I think it's important to think about standards of care and how you can maintain them. In England there are a number of different measures. One is the Care Quality Commission. So this is a body that is independent of the providers and registers and inspects hospitals on a regular basis, partially unannounced, and they assess against certain standards to see whether they are met. So they inspect hospitals in quite a detailed way. So they come with dozens of inspectors for a couple of weeks to visit the hospital, and they look at safety, and they look at effectiveness of treatment, and they look at whether the service provides a caring environment. They talk to patients. In private, they talk to staff, they inspect documentation, they look at whether the service is responsive to needs and whether the service is well led. And then they write reports, and they can potentially close down services. And they do close down services, or they can ask for services to improve certain areas, and then they are re-inspected. So it's quite an efficient way to monitor service provision. And there's also a voluntary quality network for forensic mental health, which is run by the Royal College of Psychiatrists. And this also looks at various areas: patient safety, experience, clinical effectiveness, and governance. This is voluntary, but all services actually also agree to participate in this quality network. And this network also does assessments, and they are done by multidisciplinary teams, and they include patients as well. So patients visit other services to be part of a team that inspects the quality of those services, and that is quite important as well. And these are just some examples of standards. They have quite detailed standards about physical security, procedural security, including how high the wall should be, whether it should be inspected, well lit, and so forth. So all these standards are assessed and reports are provided. And I'm just mentioning one other thing, which is commissioning for quality and innovation, which is a measure to financially incentivize good service provision. So this is a measure taken by the commissioners of services, and 2.5% of the contract, which doesn't sound a lot, but for quite expensive services it's money worth having. 2.5% of the money that is paid to services by the commissioners of the service is paid only if they achieve certain targets. And these targets change on an annual basis. So, for example, in one particular year it was physical health care. So it was necessary for all services to record the assessment of cardiometabolic parameters for all patients. And if they didn't achieve that, then they would be given 2.5% less money for their service, and then there's other targets the next year. So this is also an effective way to incentivize good treatment. And lastly, I want to say something about service user involvement, which is, as I said, important. So